welcome to House. Today, let's discuss renting or buying. Because I see a lot of YouTube and a lot of people saying out there, the way to go is to rent. Because utilizing that money to invest, you could potentially get a return, a great return over the lifetime. And to buy, your money's locked up and you've got this commitment, you've got this mortgage commitment for 30, 40 years. Ben, you're a property guru. What, in a word, rent or buy?
Buy. There's no question about it. What I find really interesting is that the people who are normally saying, yes, you should just rent and not buy and do something else with your funds, I normally find that they've never purchased a property before. Number one. Number two, if you were to sit down and actually have a conversation with someone who has purchased a property, would they change their mind 10 years down the track? So if you have a friend or a family member, ask them, when did you buy your property? 10 years ago. Do you regret the decision? 99% of people will say, no, it was the best decision I ever made.
So peace of mind would definitely come into play here.
Peace of mind is everything. So, and to give you, comparing renting to owning a property, let's use, as an example, the military. Okay.
What do you mean by that, Ben?
Well, the military, because with military, especially with families, I have friends that are in the military as well.
Yep.
And the wife's pet hate is they're relocated. Also, yeah? Every year or every 2 years, everything is paid for, which is great. But when you have children and you have a wife, very different story. As their wives have told me, they hate it. And the problem is they do not have stability.
Right. So with a similar vein, you're saying as a renter, the landlord may say, the owner of the property may say, okay, at the end of your 12 months, see you later.
Of course. And what happens now is that they sell the property.
Yep.
So they sell their investment, especially when the cost of money is increasing. And it's too much pressure on them. And they say, right, I need to sell. And then they'll sell the asset to somebody else who plan to move in. And I can assure you, by the time just before your lease is due, you will receive that notice, you're out.
And you get 30 days sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on which part of the world. Like there's different laws in place for everywhere else. Get ready to move because you're going to be moving and there's no way that you can just stay there because you like the suburb.
Yeah, correct. And yeah, if you like that suburb, you want to find another place, there may not be a place available for that price or at all.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you hear people and they talk about rented. I'm renting and I'm doing this with my money and I've got this return on my money, and that's all good. You know, it works for some people because they have different priorities in life,
yes. And
everybody is different, and we can.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we get it. Yeah, everyone's different. What we say is not going to be what fits for everybody. We totally understand that. In general, you really want to acquire that property as quickly as you can,
yep.
Whether it's a house or an apartment.
Sure, because you're getting that property game. If let's say you start off in an apartment,
yep,
because that's what you can afford. You can't afford the house. Eventually, you can upgrade.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think when it comes to purchasing property, it's all about peace of mind. There's nothing worse. You work at a job 9 to 5, super. You're making your money and that's what you need to concentrate on. The last thing you actually want is thinking, right, so I've got my job here. I don't know if I'm going to have the property at the end of the year. I've got my partner in my ear who's really concerned. I've got kids who are going to be uplifted from the school. You don't need the pressure.
No.
This is how you get sick. Having all this pressure compound upon yourself, and that's when people say, I've just had enough. I just can't deal with this. It's too much pressure. So it's really a case of being nice to yourself.
Correct.
Having a job is hard enough. Wouldn't you agree? It
True.
really is.
Yes.
And if you're in a highly stressful position as well, it makes it even tougher. You don't want the problems.
And the other argument I would suggest is people saying, okay, so the reasons to rent is because you can utilize, the opportunity cost. You can utilize those funds that you have to invest and perhaps get a higher return. Okay, I hear that, but I'd argue against that, saying capital gain in the property market is quite phenomenal. And there's a lot of tax incentives. So if you live in that for greater than a year, it's your primary residence, it's tax-free. Tell me another asset, investment that's tax-free.
Yeah, definitely.
And another thing, yeah, go ahead.
I live and breathe property, okay? And I really have seen everything. The stories that I could tell you about people, it would far outweigh a return on the S&P or ASX, whatever the case may be, by thousands of times. And you don't really hear about that because, you know, it could be where somebody, they've acquired a property for $1 million and then they've sold it, say 5 years later for $4 million. And it just goes up. And I've been involved, I've witnessed firsthand where people have spent a couple $1 million and they've walked away in under a 10-year term with just under $100 million.
And another thing is, you can leverage the value of your property. And that's very important. People discount that. Like, it's incredibly important to understand that if you've got a property, let's say it's worth $1 million, you have equity, so you own $500,000 of that, and the bank owns the remainder.
Mm-hmm.
You can use that $500,000, or the bank will lend against that $500,000 to utilize to invest, or whatever whatever you want to do with that. That's quite important.
Yeah, and the only way that you can do that is if you own a property.
Correct.
There is no way a bank is going to give you money because you're a nice person.
True.
It just doesn't exist.
Correct. So in summary, buy that property if you can.
Without a doubt. If somebody's saying to you, oh look, I would just do this, I wouldn't buy a property. My first question to them, have you ever purchased a property? Number one question. And I bet in more cases than not, they will say no, or they may tell you a fib. And if they're fibbing, you're going to be able to pick it up straight away because their whole body nature will change, and you'll get that feeling that you're not being told the truth. But that would be the first question.
Sure.
And if they say, yes, I have, the second question I would say is, why? What went wrong? Because something must have gone terribly wrong for them to basically be in a position to say, oh, I would only rent, I wouldn't buy. Speak to your friends who have purchased a property. Number one question, would you do it again? Say, what do you mean? Would you buy a property again, or would you have rented? I guarantee 99% will say definitely buy, and for good reason. And that's not because they're silly people. If you have any questions, please, if you like what we've said, tick it off, subscribe to us. If you subscribe, let us know. Drop it down in the message box and we'll come back to you. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Yep, and we always love a like.
Always. Bye.
Bye.
It's a bit brutal, but it's fucking facts.
Yeah, correct.